This video, I'm going to be analyzing M.T. Anderson's novel Feed and how it proposes to solve the shortcomings of the United States education system. My friends from the mystic world of Paldom will provide many unique perspectives on the situation and their thoughts on the book, so there will definitely be a lot of goofy shenanigans happening in the classroom. Also, only a small percentage of you are actually subscribed to the channel, so be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notifications bell for more classroom sessions. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the video.
According to the Century Foundation, one of Earth's most powerful nations, the United States of America, is underfunding their K-12 public schools by nearly $150 billion annually, robbing more than 30 million school children of the resources they need to succeed in the classroom. Now, the question is, how can we return those resources back to the kids? School funding, a heavily debated issue that is highly present in the political sphere of the United States. It comes as no surprise that many politicians, like Elizabeth Warren, advocate changes to a broken education system.
But Paparella, we're from a completely different planet from the people in the United States. Why is the education system completely broken?
Lack of government funding, lack of teacher freedom and innovation, outdated teaching methods, standardized testing, general inequality, school safety, lack of mental health services, high rates of suspension and expulsion, lack of project-based assignments, teacher salaries, banning on teaching evolution. Trust me, pal, that's for another class. So what do we do to remedy these problems? Well, one of the methods of providing better access to education is more school funding.
Hey, Paparella, sorry to interrupt you, but isn't the government of the United States supposed to fund this sort of stuff? I don't really understand Earth's policies very well, but it seems like government funding isn't working too well. Are there any other sources of funding we can look to?
Great question, Bessie. This is what M.T. Anderson's novel Feed tries to answer. In the book, the world of Earth takes place in a futuristic, late 21st century dystopian, cyberpunk world, where a piece of tech called Feed is widespread across the world.
Excuse me, Iymyo, but what is this feed you're talking about? Is this some type of food, like fish, that I'm not aware of?
Great question, Magister. You all ask great questions. Anyways, Feed is essentially a chip that is placed inside the head of the user to provide them with all sorts of advertising and information they can consume.
Like where my tax files go every time I finish them. You wanna guess who wants to know where my tax files go? My tax accountant.
Iymyo, she's trying to teach the class right now. Can you just let her speak?
Moving on. Thank you for your comment, Iymyo, by the way. The Feed is considered one of the most essential technologies run by the corporation called Feed Tech, one of the major companies that runs the world in the story. Along with other corporations, Feed Tech is a primary factor that introduces where the money goes in the Earth that we know of in the book.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't really see how this relates to school funding as a whole. Can you explain a little more about that, Paparella?
Absolutely, Oemma. In this story, the schools are heavily funded by the corporations of the world, alleviating pressure from the local governments to invigorate these schools. This is sharp contrast to the main character Titus's grandparents' time at their schools. Quote, "School isn't near as bad as it was back in his grandparents' time, when it was run by the government. Back then, everything kids learned was useless and boring. Now, though, the corporations run school and focus mostly on how to use the feed to be a good consumer and to get a job and to find bargains," close quote. What this indicates is that corporations take a larger position on how kids and teenagers are educated, rather than a state-mandated education that requires students to reach certain benchmarks, like it is in early 21st century Earth. Corporations of the world of Feed require more consumer-based education practices for students to learn how to be good customers and patrons.
Yo, I don't know about you, but this seems kind of whack. The fact that you have a, what do you call it back on Earth? Oh yeah, a S&P 500 company running the school system seems kind of like cheating in a sense. Like they're trying to raise the students to buy their products over and over again. Don't you think?
That's a great point, Shira, and I wanted to touch up on that point a bit more. If we read a bit more into the book, Violet's father provides a bit of commentary on how Americans view their products and how it influences their lives. Quote, "We Americans are interested only in the consumption of our products. We have no interest in how they are produced or what happens to them once we discard them, once we throw them away." Close quote.
So, sounds like Americans in this world wouldn't mind if corporations run the schools as long as they get what they want. It's almost like they see the corporations as a means to an end. Sounds pretty brooding, like me.
I'm not really sure that I understand Americans can follow such a thing. The corporations essentially have more control over the government if they're able to fund the schools. Am I right, Paperella?
Excellent point, Quiva. In a way, this can also connect with the hit video game Cyberpunk 2077, developed by CD Projekt Red. In the game, the player takes the role of V, an outlaw trying to make a living in the world of Night City. While on their adventures, V encounters Johnny Silverhand, a former rock star who fought against the infamous Arasaka Corporation. Johnny also raises a lot of similar points you do, Quiva. He even goes further to say that the corporations plan to create a world completely under their control. Here's what Johnny has to say about that after V questions the validity of his argument. Quote, "That what they teach folks in Saka these days? To shut down, cut power the moment truth looks them in the eye?" Close quote.
Interesting. It's as if corporations like Arasaka and FeedTech desire to control society. It's like a big scheme to persuade America that corporate beliefs are the way to go. That they're the ones in charge of other people's destiny. It makes me sick to think about.
What can we do to fix this, then? What are some ways we can provide school funding while also not compromising the future of the students?
That's an interesting question, Revolo. To start off, let's go over some of the statistics. According to fiscal.treasury.gov, in 2022, the United States utilized a budget of around $6.3 trillion, with roughly $677 billion allocated to education. That's around 10.7% of the budget allocated to education.
I'm sorry, Paparella, but that doesn't seem too bad at all. $677 billion is a lot of money, and I don't see why the school systems are still struggling.
Well, you have to put that into perspective, Lightheart. As indicated by TradingEconomics.com, Japan spent around an equivalent of $800 billion in 2022, and as shown by Statista.com, it spent an equivalent of $54 billion in education and scientific research. That's roughly 6.8% of the budget allocated to education. Additionally, according to NationMaster.com, Japan ranked higher on average in the mathematical literacy portion of the 2018 Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA, than the United States by 49 points. The PISA is basically an assessment that tests the knowledge of fields like math and reading throughout Earth's nations. Anyway, the scores mean that Japan had a 90.7% difference from the United States. Now, you may have noticed that I have used the 2018 version of the PISA. According to macrotrends.net, the United States and Japan still had similar amounts of spending in education in 2018. According to macrotrends.net, the US and Japan still had similar amounts of spending in education in 2018. The US allocated 13.15%, while Japan allocated 8.13%.
Paprella, I don't get it. The United States usually spends a greater total amount of money on education than Japan does. Yet they're doing better on standardized tests than we are. What's going on here? Why is the US still falling behind?
I was thinking the exact same thing, Vernan, and there's a lot of angles we can take from this. Let's take a look at how the US and Japan view professional development of teachers. To start, professional development is an essential aspect of teachers to grow their careers and help develop students. According to an American Instructional Resources survey entitled How Do Teachers Spend Professional Learning Time and How Does It Connect to Classroom Practice by George Zoe Sidone and Julia H. Kaufman, around 42% of teachers during the 2021 to 2022 school year have reported to have workshops or trainings done 1 to 3 times per year, and around 15% of teachers of the same school year reported that they have never had any workshops or trainings at all. That's roughly 57% of teachers getting minimal professional development. On the other hand, according to a survey created by the company Pearson on what makes an effective teacher in the United States and Japan, stronger teacher-student relationships related to heightened desires to learn within the classroom. So, in essence, teachers need to develop social skills to interact with students by learning from workshops on how to do so.
And without them, teachers won't be able to learn how to connect with students.
Exactly, pal. And that's why it was so interesting when M.T. Anderson's feed brought up a great point about relationships. In the book, when Titus's school teachers are replaced by holograms, he says, quote, "With a hologram, like when your teacher is one of them, if you aren't looking right at them, they sometimes seem to be hollow. You see them and suddenly they don't have a face that pokes out. Their faces poke in, their nose and so on, and there is nothing inside them. If you don't look right at them, they can just look like an empty shell." Close quote.
So, moral of the story, keep up relationships and both parties will succeed. That sound about right?
That's right, Bessie. And with that, we shall end the class for today. Thank you all for coming today, and I will see you all next time.
Man, I can't believe that the United States is still struggling to educate people. You wanna guess who struggles to also educate people? My tax accountant. You wanna guess who sighs after hearing a joke? My tax...